Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. If you don't know who I am, I'm C.B. Wilson. I'm the Associate Provost for Academic Personnel, and part of my world involves reviewing promotion and tenure files on behalf of the Provost, and I'm right into that as we speak. I'm taking a break to come over here and chat with you all. This year, we happen to have, at last count, 94 cases for promotion and tenure in the general university and 45 or 6 at the health sciences. So we're looking at somewhere around 150 cases, which has been normal for the last 2 or 3 years. The plan today is, after I make a few remarks, I'm going to figuratively pass, and maybe even literally pass the microphone to my colleagues here on the panel. And as I do that, I'm going to let each one of them introduce themselves so that they can tell you what they think their title really is. But these are all folks that are very much involved in the promotion and tenure process as well. The handout that you have is simply a duplication of the current WVU guidelines that applies to most of you in this room who are teaching faculty. I'm going to come back to that point in a minute, but I guess one of the things I want to ask, because I do recognize some of you, most of you are TAPs. I know that there's at least one CAP. How many are there any other CAPs? A couple, 2, 3, yeah, okay. Are there any RAPs? No. And I also noticed that there are several administrative spies in the audience, so we appreciate having you here as well. Now, before I really get started, I want to say to the teaching faculty that you are vital to the institutional mission. There are some folks on the campus that believe that having more of you will dilute our ability to maintain R1 status. Our office does not believe that in the least. Your role, as it has evolved, is really critical to our ability to maintain an R1 status. And I want to give you that very positive feedback so that you, if there are no other takeaways from this meeting, you have that one. Please believe me on that point. As we are presently in the process of realizing what we called about a year ago as the Freedom Agenda, which means that there was legislation that allowed the university to, in many ways, divorce itself from the Higher Education Policy Commission. We've been engaged in new rulemaking. Some of you are aware of this. We have, as part of that legislation, it has been incumbent upon the university to create a whole new set of rules, which basically then relieves us from following Higher Education Policy Commission rules. And I've been involved with a team that has been looking at what we have identified as faculty rules. One of the principal policies that we've been operating under, and which we are still, for a brief period of time, operating under, was Board of Governors Policy 2, which relates to promotion, tenure, academic freedom, those kinds of things. Most of that policy will now become Faculty Rule 4.2, which will still talk about promotion and tenure and employment. But part of that new rule involves changes for the teaching faculty. There are 2 main changes. One is that instead of being limited to, in numbers, to 10% of the total number of tenured, tenure track, or clinical track faculty, that percentage has been increased to 15%. The other major change is that on top of the idea that TAPS teaching faculty can have terms of up to 3 years. Upon promotion to teaching associate professor, the term can be expanded to up to 6 years, and with promotion to full professor, full teaching professor, it can be as up to a 9-year term. Now, those changes and that particular rule has been vetted by the University Planning Council. It has gone to the Board of Governors. Some of you probably already know this. It's gone to the Board of Governors. That rule, along with 5 other faculty rules, have been then circulated or made available for a 30-day public comment period. That period is now over. We had, I believe, 9 comments. We have some 3,000 faculty, so that probably gives you some idea of something, whatever it may be. I'm not going to go into those comments at this point, but the board staff will also then be posting those comments as well as the university's response to them. The rule itself, along with those other 5 rules, will then go back to the board. I believe it's for the April 20th meeting, later in April, for approval. And we presume that they will be approved, and they will be effective 15 days after the approval. So, having mentioned that, I should also indicate that this document, the handout that you have, being the language that is in the current WVU promotion and tenure document, will have to be modified to some extent. We'll have to look at that entire document in the context of the way that the rules may have changed some, and with some just technical editorial modifications. But the TAPS will now be known not as term faculty, but as teaching faculty. You're already using the prefix teaching, so we're not going to have to make any changes in that. But that is for your information. Now, what we've circulated today is the full text of the language applying to you, most of you at least. And you can see from what I have underlined there, part of the critical factors that go into, from the university perspective, what you should have in your file, which for many, many years was a paper file, and now it's a digital measures file. But you're going to have to make sure that information supporting what is underlined here has been uploaded into your digital measures file. That becomes the new gold standard for information that can be used regarding promotion and or tenure as we review those every spring. So what I'm now going to do is to, without reading this literally, because you can do that, is that I'm going to turn things over to my colleague, Melissa Latimer, who works with me in the promotion and tenure process, and many of you know her in some other capacities as well. So Melissa, introduce yourself and make comments as you choose.
Oh, thank you. Again, Melissa Latimer. I've met many of you before. I'm the director of the WVU Advanced Center. I'm also a professor of sociology and formerly served as chair of my unit for 5 years. And the comments that I have today are just because we have representatives from the parent document for the university document and for the major colleges where most teaching professors are located. I decided that I would just focus on things that are a lot more practical in terms of things that you have to take into account when you're putting your package together. And essentially, just reminding you that there's a university document, there's a college document, and that college document can add things that are more stringent than what the university has. And in some colleges, there are actually unit documents, again, which could be even more specific. And so when you're putting your package together, whether it, for your first or your second promotion, you have to take those 3 documents, or 2, depending on whether or not you have documents for your individual unit. You have to take them into account, and you have to meet the standards that are laid out in those documents, okay? And so some people focus only on their unit, some people focus only on their college, and they totally ignore the university ones, and you need to look at all 3. And so just take the time to look at them and see where they line up and where you're getting the same messages about what should be in your package. The second thing I would say that also matters is what was in your appointment letter, or any MOU that might have gone into your file modifying or adjusting the expectations or your job. Some colleges have very, very specific offer letters where they outline not only what your job is for the year, for the next 5 to 6 years, but also what you need to do in order to be promoted. And so if that's true, you need to go back to that document and take a look at it, okay? And make sure that you're hitting those requirements. If you're in a college where they don't put the specific details in your letter, but then they offer you an MOU later on, go back to that document. The other thing you need to do is you need to pay attention to the feedback that you're getting from your chair and your faculty evaluation committee. And so if they are making a suggestion in terms of your annual review that you have someone come visit your classroom and do peer review, and they mention that over and over as part of developing your portfolio before you go up for promotion, you need to make sure that you're doing that. So they are not just giving you that feedback because they're doing it because they have nothing else to do, or it's because we're supposed to be giving you formative and summative feedback when we look at your file. It's supposed to be a developmental. And so if they see a place in your expectations where you're not meeting them, they should be telling you that that's true and encouraging you to address it, and maybe even giving some suggestions or some support in terms of you doing that. So you want to pay attention to the feedback that you're getting from your chair and your faculty and evaluation committee. I would also say if you're already at the rank of teaching associate professor and you received direct feedback from either your unit, your college, or the provost in terms of, in order to be successful going from associate to professor, they might have given you some very specific things like that you need to publish more on pedagogy, that you need to attend more professional development, or whatever. That just depends on what your original assignment was and what you're expected to do. That you need to show more evidence that you affected the curriculum in significant positive ways, that you need more evidence, and these are the types of things. So you want to take a look at that letter, or those letters as well, to see if they're giving you any specific guidance in terms of what you need to do the same or a little bit differently or add to in order to make it to the rank of professor. And then I would also just remind you that for many units, a narrative is required, and for some units, they're not required, but you should always be writing a narrative. And I would strongly recommend, just in a practical sense, that you each year you could take those requirements that are outlined in either your documents and or your offer letters, and you could open a file up and put those different headings. And each year when you're doing your annual report, you start filling in those sections so that you can see where you're filling in and have a lot of evidence that you've met that criteria, and you can see where the holes still are, places that you need to develop further. And you can use that to write your narrative and to sort of frame, I was expected to do X, this is what I did in order to achieve that, here's the evidence that I did it at a high level worthy of promotion. So those are just some practical comments that I would offer you to sort of keep in mind as you're thinking about promotion.
Let me add one thing.
Sure.
Melissa mentioned several kinds of documents that you might want to be mindful about. The appointment letter, MOUs, the annual reviews. Those are not necessarily spelled out in that way in the university document. Those are what we have referred to collectively as subsequent documents. Now, one other subtlety here is that our office does actually count and look at those various documents to help make the case for or against promotion or tenure. Every now and again, and I always like to mention this, the vast majority of faculty in any given year who stand for promotion and or tenure are successful. But there are a few that are not. And every now and again, one or more of those individuals might file a grievance. And from time to time, one of the things that they will encourage their attorney to think about is that there might be comments in your department chair letter that tell you that you need to do X, Y, and Z, and then they will come back and say, but there's nothing in the university document that says they can do that. Well, we would argue to the contrary, okay? But that's just a point of information. We do look at those documents, and those are, as a group, we would refer to in the university guidelines as subsequent documents. So I'll let you, Melissa, pass this on to Mike.
Does this one not work?
Well, pass the baton on to Mike.
I'm
a music guy.
Sorry.
I'm Mike Perrone. I'm Associate Dean for Faculty in the Eberly College of Arts and Sciences. I want to start by emphasizing something that Melissa just said, which is to provide a narrative. When you're applying for promotion, you should provide a narrative that explains what your major achievements are in the areas of significant contribution, and that would be for teaching faculty, that would be teaching, and for the clinical faculty, it would normally be service and teaching. And this, I will tell you, the most helpful ones are ones that not only have, some paragraphs that explain what you did, but also some tables. For the teaching faculty in particular, it's always nice to see a list of all the courses they taught, how many students were in there, and the big three SEI items. I know it can be tedious to put something like that together, but it makes it easy for your department committee and your department chair, the college committee, and the dean to make the best case. It's like an executive summary of your entire file. And one way you should approach this is, what can I do to make it easy for people to see what I've accomplished? Right? Make it easy. Make it easy for people to say yes. That's what your job is. Now, just a few points. In our experience, the thing that we get the most questions about with regard to teaching faculty is the significant curricular and or programmatic contributions. That's in the university guidelines. I think they actually stole them from the Eberly College appointment letters, because I think we were among the first to have teaching faculty and to codify the expectations. And the idea isn't that complicated. You have to be an excellent classroom teacher, or at least a good classroom teacher. You have to be a meritorious classroom teacher. But beyond that, you're supposed to be making assessment-based improvements in the teaching mission of your unit. That could be designing new courses, redeveloping courses, writing a lab manual, developing a new way to train and supervise the teaching assistants in a multi-section course. Those are the kinds of things we're looking for, and you should make it clear that you did those things in your narrative and whatever tables you would have in what I'll call the executive summary. That makes it easy. Sometimes we have to dig to find that stuff. We do try to find it. Now, the new thing is being promoted to teaching professor. We've had one case in the college so far. And the university guidelines that you have say that you have to establish that your teaching is nationally recognized. That is, it's recognized nationally or internationally. And in Eberly, we operationalize this as follows. We say you can show that your teaching is nationally recognized either by having external evaluations of your teaching, and then we follow the normal rules for soliciting external evaluations, or by having a record of pedagogically related publications, in national journals or presentations at national conferences. Or you could have both. A lot of people worry about getting external evaluations. In practice, it's not hard to find people who are happy to write external evaluations of your teaching. They don't have to be other teaching professors. They just have to be people who teach as part of their professorial jobs. Let me say a little bit about clinical faculty. Teaching faculty are a lot alike in terms of what's expected of them and how they're evaluated, but each clinical faculty member is unique. And the university recognizes this by saying in multiple places in the mother document that the contributions are to be evaluated as outlined in the letter of appointment. The annual evaluations will be based on assignments as described in the letter of appointment. And furthermore, the university understands that you can't take the same approach to getting external evaluations for clinical faculty as you do for research or teaching faculty. It's easy to find professors who can evaluate research and teaching, but it might be difficult to find a professor at an R1 institution who can evaluate the service that the clinical faculty member is providing, because that's what's going to be evaluated for them, is their service. And so the university says, for external reviews of service, individuals in non-university settings may be more appropriate as referees. And if you think about that for a moment, you'll realize that that really gives you a tremendous flexibility, because if you can have people from non-academic settings evaluate service, they have to be qualified. It can't be your pastor, unless your pastor is qualified. But if they can be from non-university settings, then the ones who are from university settings don't necessarily have to be from R1. And we struggle with this every year when we have clinical faculty who have to be evaluated, but in the end, it's always worked out very nicely, and we haven't had trouble getting external evaluations. And I'll just summarize, I'll end by summarizing some data. In the last 5 years that have been completed, we had 27 applications in the college for teaching clinical and research faculty, and 23 of those people were, or 23 of those cases were successful. That's 85%. 4 failures. Now, of the 4 failures, 3 of them had no chance at the starting gate because their file was empty. And when I say empty, I mean, imagine someone who's asking to be promoted as a teaching faculty member whose file does not include a single syllabus. That's a non-starter. We only have had 1 case where you could say that the person failed in a substantive sense. And this was someone who was a very fine teacher, but did nothing else. There was just no evidence whatsoever of course development or any of that kind of stuff. And just for comparison, during that same 5 years, there were 104 applications for promotion or tenure in the tenure track lines, and there was a 94% success rate. Many of those people who would fail in that case leave the university before they even apply. This year, we sent 5 positive recommendations out of 5 applications for TAPS and CAPS to the provost's office, 100%. And of the 26 tenure track applications, we sent 24 positive recommendations, so 92%. So this year, the TAPS and CAPS win.
Just as an aside, on developing a narrative, I was reminded when Mike was reinforcing that idea of a case a few years ago now where we had an individual who was in a tenure track position and who was engaged in very arcane research. He did not get the highest rating in his research in that particular year. He grieved, and he ended up losing the grievance, but during the course of the grievance, part of what I suggested to him, because he had not written a narrative, was if you believe that the problem is that your colleagues don't understand your research, then reduce it to writing, and put it in a narrative. His response was, "Oh, what a good idea."
It's still a good idea.
It's
Still a good idea.
Exactly.
Just to reinforce that.
Okay, now, some of you might not have actually heard my comment earlier that I'm a music person, and from time to time I do conduct, and so passing a baton for me has a different kind of meaning than if I was in running relay races.
Yeah.
But I'm now going to pass the baton to Dale.
Hi, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Dale Niederhauser, and I am Associate Dean for Academic Affairs in the College of Education and Human Services. That's a mouthful.
Get a little closer to that.
Okay. I served as department chair prior to taking on Associate Dean responsibilities, and so I was involved in the first promotions of teaching assistant professors in the college, who came from my department. And at that time, we kind of learned of the opportunity to have promotions and wanted to move quickly because we didn't want people to have another year where there was an opportunity that they weren't able to take advantage of. So we quickly put together some criteria and a process, and had, I believe, 4 teaching assistant professors in my department go forward. That was 2 or 3 years ago. All of them were successful, and so we were very pleased with that. And we wanted to put a process in place to make this more formal, so it wasn't just kind of, whatever happens, happens. And so we have revised our document, our P&T document, and have included language about term faculty in that. So my colleagues from CEHS, I encourage you to look carefully at that. One of the things that became clear when we were reviewing this process was that we needed some kind of evidence to back up the narratives that folks write. And I think, and this is advice that I've given to tenure track faculty, that is that your record is your data. So the courses that you've taught, the SEIs, any publications or presentations or anything like that you've done, all of those things are data. And what we encourage you to do is to build a logical case based on the appointment letter that says these were the things that I was charged with doing, and then I did them, and here's the evidence that shows that I did them. And that's the tricky part, is to get this compelling evidence that says, oh, wow, that is the best syllabus I've ever seen, or I see how you changed the syllabus in these ways, and that's really addressing the concerns that were raised in your SEIs. And that's the kind of systematic kind of case that you want to build, right? So here's the initial syllabus and the kinds of activities I was doing. Here's the comments from my students. Here's how I revised. Here's the new syllabus, and here's the comments from the other students. If you can show that kind of a progression, that builds the case that you are going above and beyond. And in our documents, I'm not sure how other colleges are handling it. It's not just time and rank. It's not just that you've been here for an amount of time. You also need to show what we're calling exemplary performance, so that you are going above and beyond what's expected, and that. So when you look at your appointment letter, you say, well, this is what's expected of me. And I've done such a bang-up job on this that I'm going above and beyond. And that's why I deserve to be promoted. So the kinds of things, the annual review materials, the letters that you've gotten from your chair, you can pull from those and have, my chair said over a 4-year period that each year I was improving. My chair said, so draw from those letters. The rankings that you get, whether you're excellent or good or those kinds of rankings. Statements from students. So I know we all get the note from a student who says, when I was taking your class, I really struggled with stuff, but now that I'm out in the real world, you were dead on and I get it. So those kinds of things, that unsolicited things from students. SEIs with comments. And I encourage you not to cherry pick comments out of the SEI, to provide a balanced view, because if someone goes back and looks at the actual SEIs and all you've done is pulled out all the strong positive comments, it kind of colors the way that they're going to be thinking about those comments. So be balanced, and if there's concerns, address the concerns that the students have. And then I think the brief statement, the narrative is essential because you've got the data, you've still got to make the argument, make the case. So the process is now more clearly defined in our document. However, it is an ongoing learning experience. And as we see more cases come through, we can get more positive exemplars. You see a bang up case and you say, wow, this is good. We talk to the individual and ask if we could use that in training and helping other people see that. So we're going to be over time, we're really going to be kind of refining this process and improving it. And we'll do that with the help of you. As you put these things together and come up with good ways to present your case and to provide that evidence and to make that argument, we'll be drawing on that and using that as we're moving forward to help others through the same process.
Okay, just a quick aside there. When Dale was talking about going beyond the minimum, of course, that's naturally helpful, but one of the hardest things to do is to demonstrate in your file the quality of what you're doing. It's easy to list numbers, but to make a case for the quality is, of course, more helpful when we get the file as well. We'll pass the baton on to Graham.
Hi, I'm Graham Peace. I'm the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Programs and Academic Affairs in the College of Business and Economics. We're relatively new to this as well as everybody else. And going last, you guys have said most of the things that I would say, frankly. I will emphasize a couple things. Number one, we really believe our TAPs are part of the full faculty, and we really appreciate the work that the TAPs do. We brought up the R1 piece. We fully believe that we couldn't be R1 if we didn't have TAPs covering a majority of our classes, frankly, a lot of our classes. If we didn't have them, we would have adjuncts, we'd have overloads, we have all sorts of different things going on. So the TAPs do a wonderful job at teaching, which is, of course, one of our primary roles. And then that frees up research faculty to do the research, which is another of our primary roles. So we greatly appreciate the faculty. It's actually written into our college operating guidelines that the TAPs are treated just like every other faculty. They have full voting rights, et cetera. So we basically, when it comes to P&T and annual reviews, we treat them exactly the same as every other faculty member because that's what they are. They're just regular faculty. So they go through their department committee, their chair, et cetera. I'd give a couple pieces of advice. And we've only had 6 TAPs go up, frankly, for promotion, and all 6 have been successful, thankfully, so we've got a good record with it at all the levels. One was an instructor going to teaching assistant, that's going up this year. The rest were assistants going up to associates. You do have to be a good teacher and a minimum of a good teacher, obviously. And that sustained record of excellence, I think, is something that we really take to heart. You have to really show that you're maintaining that. It can't be you started off great when you came here and you're sort of just doing what you need to do. We want to see that sustained record of excellence, an improvement there, trying to improve yourself, going to seminars to try and become better teachers. Just as researchers are trying to become better researchers, we want to see our TAPs becoming better TAPs. So that's sort of what we look at with that sustained record of excellence. We have been advising our TAPs who are going up to try and show an impact on the field outside of the college. I know that's not necessary from the assistant to associate, but we like our promotion files that go up to be slam dunks. And so we've been telling our TAPs, hey, if you go to a conference, do a presentation on teaching, put that in. If you're writing a publication, a pedagogical piece, put that in. All of that are things that we think make the case. If you're doing that at a national level, international level, clearly you're doing something right in our classrooms and helping us out. So we really push that external piece. And of course, you have to have that, I believe, when you're going up for the full professor piece. Don't forget service is another piece. It is 20% of the workload in most cases, right? You can't get through, in our college at least, if you have completely neglected the service side of things. So we do want service. Clearly, teaching is the most important piece, but we do appreciate service, and we need that as well. It's got to be meritorious. The 3 pieces of advice I'd give, based on what I've heard here and what I was thinking about coming here. One is, I can't remember who said it, but read your letters, right? We are big believers that the letters you're getting from your chairs and from your department committees are telling you where you are. And we want our letters from our department committees and our chairs to say, if you want to go for promotion, this is what you need to do. And if you're not doing it, then obviously you're not going to get it. So read the letters. The second thing is make sure your digital measures record is complete. We've had cases, more frankly, with the research track faculty, but we've had cases where, again, syllabi are not uploaded, right? You're not going to be able to go up and be successful if your syllabi are not uploaded. If your SEIs are not uploaded, I know that's automatic now, so that takes care of that. But make sure everything's in digital measures. If you're presenting, make sure it's there and it's properly documented. And the last is write the narrative. I can't emphasize that enough. We want our TAPs to be successful when they go up. I don't know of any chair who comes to me and says, I don't want this person to be successful when they go up. We want everybody to be successful. You can write the letter for us, frankly. It makes my life so much easier as an associate dean, and I know we've got some chairs here, it makes their life so much easier if your narrative is, this is what I've done, this is why I deserve this, this is the things I've contributed. It makes our life easier. And, everybody wants their life to be easier, right? If you write it for us, it makes life much easier. So I'll leave it at that because I know we want to have questions, but that's basically our viewpoint on it.
And before we go to the questions, and I want to be careful not to forget this, this session was set up by the Teaching and Learning Commons.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are not aware of all the programming that unit does to help you learn how to be a better teacher, then you need to explore that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Okay, the question is related to how much time between promotions. Generally speaking, first of all, I know that there's language somewhere, and I think it's in the arts and science document for sure, that normally a person who is at the assistant professor level probably, and I think the way it's stated is that they may go up for associate in their 6th year. The other rule that is in the university document is that normally there are at least 5 years between promotions. Okay, there are 2 questions there. One is in relation to what is in the university document. It speaks to the point of a term faculty member and his or her chairperson may choose to initiate consideration for the first promotion. I think that just means that you ask your chair to consider you for promotion. I don't think there's any magic about that other than the literal interpretation.
Or the chair may suggest that too. Hey, you're doing great if you consider going up. So it can be initiated either way.
Sure.
The committee letters, the annual reviews, they could be starting to tell them that you're very close. You should consider next year or the following year.
Mm-hmm.
From your FEC or your chair, you want to start looking for that language. If you're not getting it, you could just ask them, am I getting close?
Okay, and the other question was if you have a kind of a dual appointment, how does that work? And that actually is pretty unusual. For someone who was in the tenure track, I would say to them, wherever your tenure home is, the other unit should submit material to that unit, and then the home unit then makes the judgment or makes the decision to move ahead with it. Now, are you 50-50 literally, or then you probably ought to have the two chairs talk to each other. I mean, we don't have a process for that because it's pretty unusual.
Yeah. No, that's why I'm asking you. Yeah, that makes sense.
So start with having your chairs have a conversation, and then if they run into problems, then I'll try to mediate that.
I'll add too, from the College of Business perspective, we're trying to be proactive and try to encourage all of our faculty to move along the promotion process. We don't want people sitting in one level for 20 years. We want people to advance. Right.
And actually, there is a concept that I've been promoting with deans in addition to simply using the annual review to speak to how well you did last year, that there should be some language in those chair's documents or the department documents about the progress you're making toward the next action, which in the case of you all would be toward the next promotion, and what do you need to do, and are you in a kind of a static mode, or are you making progress to get to that next point?
So are the external reviewers given full access to the digital measures file, or how does that work?
No, they,
It's a mini packet.
you prepare a package that will be transmitted to them. We're doing it electronically now in the Everly College, but in the case of the research faculty, you know, it's usually a narrative and their CV and some reprints and things like that. So you would have a narrative, some syllabi. If you gave a presentation, you might have your slides or a publication. Whatever sample of your work you feel that they would need to make a judgment about your contributions in teaching.
Yeah, so the really short answer to the way you asked the question is no. They do not get access to digital
So it's the
measures.
same way we did it before.
It's
Yes.
kind of the old-fashioned way that they're going to get something that is prepared through the college.
I guess I would add to that, one of the real things that we saw an issue with was the service bid. And providing evidence of exemplary service is really difficult. We tend to think of service as serving on committees at the university, but there's also committees you may be involved with at the state level. There may be professional organizations that you're involved with, and all of those things constitute service. So we've got service to the state. We are a land-grant institution, and so any service to the state is very important. Service to the university, you know, we need that work. And in our college, much like as Graham said, it is, there's no distinction between term faculty and tenure track faculty when we're asking people to serve on committees. That's true. But it really is an important piece to that work. But finding the service evidence is often tricky. And so that's when I'd suggest you put some time into it, and the narrative is where you can really kind of highlight some of the things that you've done, looking at service to West Virginia, service to WVU, and service to the profession.
Yeah, and I think, well, I know, for example, in the Statler College, the dean perceives service to the department as kind of the expectation for everybody, period. And if that's all you do, then you're not going to get much more than a very B-flat. See, there's the music thing coming in. A pretty B-flat rating.
B-flat.
So part of the pitch there is university level service. Part of it, especially in the Statler College, would be service to the profession. Okay, so part of the comment that was made relates to trying to fit what TAPS do into a typical tenure track series of boxes.
Right.
And I guess, I mean, first, I don't disagree with you, although I hadn't really thought about that myself particularly. And it would seem to me that the first thing you would need to do would be to try to work with your department chair, or maybe your colleagues in the department, to shape for you what that means. Because I'm guessing, as we just heard from the person in physics, that what you are confronted with is very different than what she is confronted with. Mm-hmm. And so this may kind of vary from unit to unit. So I would, first step would be to go back to your chair and try to figure out how to work through that problem. I know that there are units that will put advising in the teaching box so that other kinds of service can go in the service box. And we haven't tried to adjudicate that necessarily.
I would also add that with the outreach, that's a consistent theme with STEM education, because it's not just about the students on campus, but also trying to expose STEM in a variety of ways to people at earlier stages in their life in the educational system. And that could be through 4-H, you know, it could be through all kinds of things throughout the state, you know, like going down to the southern part of the state, Green Bank, and, you know, working there and taking kids down there. So I think the category of outreach, though, is one that would be useful if we could come up with some sort of consistent definitions, examples for. And I think that I'm thinking about the STEM education, I'm thinking about Gay Stewart. And I think there are people also over in Davis education, and Eberly, at least, at a minimum, that would be expected to have that outreach.
And it's also specified separately
Yeah.
from planetarium oversight.
Right.
Right.
Because that's part of your normal job, right?
I would recommend that. That's one case where I think you writing the narrative really helps the administration. Absolutely. That's the thing to do. Because we've got a couple tabs here, doing study abroad, things like that. Where does study abroad fit? Well, if they write it up and say, this is teaching. This is what I did. I taught these students. I took them. I gave them this experience. I'm great with that. That makes my life easier. It's slotting it into the box. So I guess we're lucky. Dale and I have just been talking here. We don't seem to have this problem in B&D. Basically, we teach teaching, or we treat teaching as teaching and service as service, and it's the same for every faculty member, no matter what. So I think we're lucky.
Yeah, I'd add too, I was at Iowa State prior to coming here, and I was given the outreach medallion, the commendation for outreach, and I still have no idea what outreach is. So my sense of it is that outreach is service.
Yep.
But service is not necessarily
That's it.
outreach,
That's
right?
right.
So
That's
so
it.
some of the outreach, service work that you do will be outreach, but there's all these other things going on too.
It's very philosophical.
So I think 2013 is an important year. And it also seems to have said something about the chairs putting in SEIs. So
Well, SEIs are automatically entered now.
after 2013, they'll all be there.
Oh, I don't know about that.
No, that's not true.
Current
No.
Don is asking a question about the backfilling of faculty files into digital measures so we can get rid of the paper files. And that's an Everly specific thing, so we can talk about that.
We made it the responsibility of our faculty to upload the SEIs that weren't automatically put in.
Thank you very much for being here. And thank you for the Teaching and Learning Commons.
We appreciate what you do.